Hello, welcome to another episode of The Healthy Enterprise. My guest today is Yuliana Mihaylova. She's a biotech executive with expertise in leading R&D teams, overseeing scientific product development from inception to launch, and biotech and pharma management consulting. She is also the co-founder and CEO of OliveBio, which is a company that creates scalable and affordable bioplastics through sustainable biomanufacturing. Very interesting, and looking forward to this conversation. So let's get started. Yuliana, thank you for joining me today for this episode. I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story with the listeners. So let's start with that. Let's start with, tell us about yourself and who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Very excited to be here, having seen all the other guests. So my name is Yuliana Mihaylova, as we've established the pronunciation. I am, I'm a scientist and entrepreneur. I have a PhD in genetics, but I've had a very meandering path to get to where I am today. And where I am today is I'm the CEO and co-founder of OliveBio, which is a Los Angeles-based company focused on solving the plastic pollution problem. And how do we do that? We're trying to figure out a better way to manufacture alternatives to petrochemical plastics. So alternatives that can degrade faster and not pollute the environment in doing so.
So you, like you said, you started in a science background, and then at some point you transitioned. And what was the motivation for this shift in you? Because was this originally where you wanted to go with your career, or were you on a completely different track?
No, I I was many times on a variety of different tracks. So I think as I look back, like it does have a continuity, my career, or maybe it's the stories, we tell about ourselves that it all had meaning from
Yeah,
the
there's
beginning.
a thread. There's a common denominator here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but it was definitely not a very obvious path. So after high school, I actually thought I wanted to be a psychologist. So I did my undergrad in psychology, decided, no, that's not for me. I actually really love biology and I want to focus on that. So that has been a long lasting passion, definitely not moving away from biology. But within biology, I did my PhD in genetics, and then I thought I wanted to stay in academia and be a professor. Then I decided it's not quite for me, and I wanted to break into the biotech industry, and I did so initially through biotech and pharma consulting, which was also another maybe not so obvious jump, PhD trying to do business.
Right.
But I had a great time there. I learned a lot about biotech and pharma businesses. And then after that, I joined a biotech startup in the pet genetics field. Joined it with my husband. We've always worked together on a bunch of different things. So we joined that startup together. He was the co-founder there, and I was part of the executive team. We saw this startup through all the way from beginning through acquisition. And then after that, we wanted to do something that we haven't done before, something that we deeply care about, and we're very, something that matters a lot to us, and that was tackling plastic pollution. And it's been something that specifically for me, it's been in my head for a very long time. During my lab days when I was doing my PhD, I became very conscious of all the plastic waste that's generated, just in a day's work of, a scientist's work. And it's just mind-boggling. It's like this full massive trash of just plastic pipette tips and falcon tubes and everything. And like you've used it for such a short amount of time, and then it persists after you for such a long amount of time afterwards. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and that was like maybe around, when was it? 2016 was when I graduated, and I started thinking about it more seriously. And then in 2020, we had a child, and I was again confronted with like the ubiquity of plastics in childcare, and like you need something for your baby, here you go, plastic, plastic, plastic. And It's just, yeah, it just struck me again, and
It,
was, I guess, the second push.
it's amazing how our frame of reference changes, from whatever phase of life we're in, and
Yeah,
where we recognize things like this, where wow, there's an abundance of this
yeah,
plastic, that you didn't see before because you weren't really in that stage of your life. Like, I think we talked about this
yeah.
before. My wife had a health situation a year ago, and where we spent, she spent 4 weeks in the hospital, and I
Mhm.
went there every day as well. And the daily, when you brought up the plastics, and it reminded me of that, like the daily usage of plastics. I mean, just that I
Yeah,
saw on a day-to-day basis is happening with every patient. It's like
yeah,
plastic is, there's an abundance of it. So explain what OliveBio is then, because this is a really cool solution that you've come up with.
yeah. So, as I mentioned, we focus on producing alternatives to the traditional type of plastics, also known as petrochemical plastics. And we focus on one specific material class called polyhydroxyalkanoate. Last time I say this word, in short,
So what?
in short, it's PHAs. Let's just refer to them as PHAs. It's a class of biopolymers. They're basically derived from renewable sources, and what's really cool about them is that they degrade in pretty much any environment you put them in, and they do so really rapidly. So you put them in soil, they degrade in soil. You put them in marine water, fresh water, in a composting facility, in your home composter, and they degrade much, much more quickly than pretty much any other type of bioplastic. So
Wow.
depending on the environment, we're talking about a few months or like a year or two, which is ridiculous when you compare it to petrochemical plastics, which persist for like hundreds of years.
Yeah, yeah,
And another cool thing about them is that when they degrade, because of the specific way in which they degrade, they do not leave microplastics behind, which is, something that's probably everyone's heard about microplastics at this point, how we're finding them, in our brain, in our bloodstream and placentas, and pretty much anywhere we look, we find a lot of
yeah.
microplastics. So we love PHAs as a potential solution to that problem.
Okay, so the first question that comes to my mind is what triggers the decomposition process? Like, if you're using this
Mhm.
plastic as a vessel for a product, I
Mhm.
mean, I mean, how, if you do you use it for things like juice or like fluids or anything like that, or is it only solids? Like, what prevents the
Mhm.
breaking down? What prevents it from breaking down while it's in its spe- specified use, as
Yeah.
opposed to when you actually introduce it to your compost? Like, how does it know when to not start composting?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want it to compost while you're drinking your juice, for sure.
Exactly, yeah, that's my question. How does it
Yeah.
know?
No, it's a great question. So PHAs, they're natural product. Like they were not created in a lab. Like they did
Mm,
exist originally they exist in the environment, and they're actually bacteria food. So some species of bacteria make them within their bodies during stressful conditions. During stressful conditions, when there's not enough food around for bacteria, they actually eat that accumulated PHA to just have more energy and keep on going. So it is PHA is bacterial food. You can think about it in this way.
right,
So it in our everyday applications, you can think about it this way. Like if you have a very bacteria rich environment, like your trash bin or your
right,
compost, or soil or whatever,
yeah,
then this would trigger decomposition. But
okay,
yeah, in the day-to-day use, hopefully it's not so ridiculously bacteria rich that it would trigger decomposition as you're using it. That said, there is more of a shelf life concern with PHAs
right,
than there would be with petrochemical plastics, because it's an interesting problem. Like you want it to last long enough, but not too long.
right,
So there's different tweaks you can do depending on what materials you mix PHAs with to kind of prolong that or shorten that window of
right.
decomposition.
So maybe less less of of a situation to use for consumables like food products or things like that, and maybe more applicable to packaging for items, things.
You could use it. You could use it for both. So
You
a way
can.
to
Oh, cool.
regulate, yeah, you could a way to regulate, for example, like the speed of decomposition and like the shelf life sort of
Mm,
thing is through the thickness of the material. So if you imagine if you have like a cup made out of PHAs, like if you have something that has thicker walls, it will last you a lot longer than
right.
something that has very thin walls.
Right.
But generally speaking, for everyday use and for single-use plastics, PHAs is getting increasingly more and more incorporated into
Wow.
different things.
So there's really no limit what you could use it for.
It's still, I'd like to say that there's no limit,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, it's not the most perfect drop-in solution for petrochemical plastics. It's getting there, and it's like gradually, like people are figuring out more and more applications for it in different processes and different final products. But I'd like to imagine a world one day where PHAs are used in every single aspect where plastics are used at. But it is currently more suitable for those applications where where you want it to degrade eventually. Say, for example, if you have like a household like mixer, you don't want that to be made of PHA necessarily at
Right.
this point.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So definitely, like out of the gate, packaging is probably number
Packaging is
one,
a good one. Yeah,
big one.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So how does OliveBio fit into this? How do you, what do you do? What does the company actually deliver?
Yeah, so we're still at an R&D phase, but what we're aiming to achieve is basically redesign the production process for PHAs. So if I take a step back, um, PHAs are currently produced through, I mentioned they're bacteria foods, so people
Hmm.
produce PHAs through a process called bacterial fermentation. So basically, you grow a ton of bacteria in a big vat, somewhat similar to like beer brewing, if you have that imagery
Okay.
in your head.
Yeah. Or wine.
Yeah, similar looking equipment to some degree.
Yeah.
Um, but basically, you have this, large amount of solution full of bacteria, and you're doing different things to them to induce them to produce PHA and accumulate PHA within their bodies.
Okay.
And after that, after like you're satisfied with the level of accumulation of PHA, you basically want to open the bacterial cells, open them up to take the PHA out of the cells. And then, you do a lot of purification and a lot of, downstream cleaning up. And that's the standard process. So it's a very labor intensive and somewhat costly. So bacterial fermentation is very often used it's a great process for stuff like, pharmaceuticals, where it's a high value but low abundance sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for bioplastics, the way we see it at least is that fermentation does present some potential challenges for commoditizing that material, so making it something that's highly abundant and not so expensive. Because bacteria are, kind of like a black box a little bit, and they're very finicky. They're influenced a lot by pH, by salinity, by different nutrient environments. So every fermentation batch is a little bit of a cross your fingers sort of thing for the optimal result.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is actually get away from bacteria as much as possible. So instead of using the whole bacteria, we're actually focusing on specific enzymes. So enzymes are types of proteins, basically. And we're using enzymes not only from bacteria, but from around the living world, really. We're using some human enzymes too. We're focusing on enzymes that we can put together, and they, give them what they need, and they produce PHA outside of the confines of bacteria. And why that is promising is because you have a much more precise level of control in the process. Like, we're basically sampling at every single moment of the process what's happening. We can observe it very well, time everything very well, and respond accordingly. I'll mention the amazing AI term. We do have an AI component to that, where we're able to respond in real time to what's happening in the reaction and have that really very precise level of control. And then the nice thing about not having bacterial cells in your production process is that also you don't have to break them open and try to separate out the PHA out of the bacterial debris.
Right.
So it's a much more straightforward purification process as well. Um, and yeah, we're building our system right now. And yeah, going towards proof of concept, like finalizing our first proof of concept later this year.
Wow. Congratulations. And good job explaining that without blowing me away with scientific terminology because I actually got it. I got
Great,
it.
I'm
I
glad it
understand. Good job. Very cool. That's very exciting. Like it's and so once you get to that stage, where does that take you then after that point?
Mm. Yeah, so this is like, so by the end of this year, as I mentioned, we're kind of aiming to have that first prototype version of our system where everything is hooked up together. We're putting the starting materials in and we're getting PHA out and we're like, there you go. And the next step is to start iterating on that and optimizing it further. So say, for example, the enzymes we're using, we want to further engineer them to make them even more efficient and even more stable in this environment that's outside of bacterial cells.
Hmm.
Because, enzymes typically function within the cells, right? So if you take them outside of the cells, there's specific tweaks that you need to do. And you need to poke them and prod them a little bit so that they're happy
Yeah.
that's out of the cell environment. So there's going to be a lot of that going on just to kind of increase the efficiency of the process and bring the costs further down. And starting to think about scaling that little prototype, scaling it into something bigger, expanding our lab operations, and starting to do pilots with some partners that we're already talking with, which is very exciting.
That's great. So that's where you can actually use this and actually apply it to create something for
Yeah,
a specific use. Oh, that's
yeah.
really exciting. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me about the name of the company, OliveBio. I'm
Uh,
curious. I
yeah,
love it though. I love the brand. It looks really cool. I appreciate it, but I'm curious about the name.
yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. It's There were no designers involved.
Oh, good job.
So the name of the company came from. So I mentioned I'm working with my husband. We've been married for a long time now. We've worked together for 14 years, and we have a son together. And our son's name is Oliver.
Oh, nice.
So Olive Bio is kind of like, it's another thing we care deeply about, and we kind of saw the connection between the two. And you know being the fact that Oliver was a little bit of a catalyst for that company as well, with
Yeah.
us being exposed to all the plastics, we thought it's suitable.
It's perfect. It's you're doing things for the next generation of people. That's cool. Wow, that's really great. I like that connection. So how was it in morphing yourself from being in science to being an entrepreneur? Has that been a easy transition for you? Did you even know you had a little entrepreneurial spirit inside you?
I think I did, but it took me a long time to gain the confidence to get there. um, So my parents are actually entrepreneurs, so I kind of grew up in that environment. They're actually chemical engineers, although while I was alive, they rarely ever worked as chemical engineers, but that was their background. Um, but yeah, so I kind of saw, growing up, saw what it is like to have your own business, the type of things you care about, and the type of like what your day looks like. So I was familiar with that. With that side of things. But, then I went into academia and I wanted to be a professor and all that. But then I guess I mentioned earlier, I'd like to think that there was an arc to my whole experience and there was, some kind of driving force that was semi-conscious. And I think, it had all of my experiences have kind of taken me to that entrepreneurial space. Specifically, well, I managed to take something out of all of my experiences along the way. So during the PhD, I think I took something very valuable for entrepreneurship, which is things are going to fail a lot, like so much. They're going to fail all the time, and you just have to be okay with that and just think critically about what's happening, and just pig-headed perseverance. So that's something you master during a PhD.
Right.
Uh,
Good
I think
point.
that's the main thing you master. And then when I was part of that pet genetics company, I really saw firsthand like how things start being built from zero, and like to get it to the point where our team managed to get it in the end to be a nice buttoned up company that got acquired by actually the largest animal pharma company in the world. It was a
Hmm.
great journey to see, and I kind of like learned so many things along the way. And I think some of the most important things I learned were that there's no point and no use thinking about, oh, I can't do this, or oh, I'm not the best, most suitable, perfect person to do this. It's more like, okay, we need this. There's no resources. There's nobody else. You go do it. And I think that was very valuable because it helps you build confidence, because the first time you're mortified and you're like, I can't possibly do this. And then you realize, oh, it wasn't so bad. So next time you're even better. And that happens in all aspects of things when it comes to entrepreneurship. And I think, yeah, gradually through these experiences, you kind of learn trusting yourself a little more, and seeing that, well, I mean, things will go wrong inevitably, but as long as you have a plan and a goal, it will hopefully work out.
Yeah. It's kind of like parenting.
Yeah.
At the beginning, you think, I can't do this. I have to take this brand new baby home and look after it. And, you
Yeah.
kind of look at it like a very monumentous opportunity. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's just day by day, step by step. You get a little better at it. And then you decide to
Yeah.
have another one. So there you go. And then,
Or not.
or not, or have multiple businesses, right? Instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
You brought up AI not long ago. Are you taking advantage of some
Mm.
innovative technology, AI or automation or anything like that? Is there anything you're tapping into at the moment?
We are, yeah. As anyone else who has a business right now is tapping in one way or another.
Somewhere, yeah.
We've been utilizing it in a lot of different ways. So from one aspect, it's built in our system, so it's like an AI controller on top of our system. As I mentioned, we're training the system on different conditions, and the AI is able to respond to changing reaction conditions in the most appropriate way in order to maximize PHA production.
Hmm.
So that's the overarching kind of goal. But then in our day-to-day operations, we also use AI tools a lot. So my husband, actually, he's also a scientist. He is a data scientist and bioinformatician and biologist. So he's been tinkering with like machine learning, and which was, formerly formerly what the most AI used to be called. So he's been tinkering with that sort of thing for a long time. And he has been really impressed actually with the capability of a lot of current tools to kind of alleviate some of the coding work that he has to do on a daily basis. So he's been saying, wow, like this is like, it saves me, like instead of hiring two junior developers and just, spot checking, I'm just spot checking what the AI tool is producing. And it's pretty much the same. It's maybe controversial to say that, but that's what his takeaway was. Um,
Yeah, I
so
think
it's,
that's a pretty common experience right now. Is that
yeah,
the speed and the accuracy that
yeah,
is really taking the world by storm, and it's everyone's saying it's just learning to adapt to utilizing this tool, but still using people to proof it, to test it, to
yeah.
ensure, but the speed of and accuracy of collecting so much data and getting some sort of result from that is what's really happening in most people's areas. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's our experience as well, that you use it to do the grunt work, but you still need a competent human
Yeah.
checker at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Um, and I use it for more trivial things like, polish my writing here, or, what do you think about this slide here? What else should I add? Which, yeah, I've been enjoying myself with that.
Yeah. That's helpful too. It has.
Mhm.
It kind of reaffirms what you're thinking and provides that little bit of extra support that you need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next stages now. How have you found this sort of journey in with the business? Have you had any? I mean, obviously challenges come along the way, and have you had any sort of major hiccups or things that you've pushed through in this process? I mean, I know you're not to market yet, but um,
Yeah.
anything that you've kind of that you've learned through this process at this stage?
I've I personally have faced maybe a recurring challenge in OliveBio, similar to what I faced through all my other career transitions, um, of which I've had a lot. And I think that challenge is really when you enter a new field, kind of establishing that network, that relevant network of people who can help you and support what you're doing. Um, and I think it can be a little hard to kind of make those initial connections, and that can slow things down in the beginning. Um, so that has been, sorry, that's not necessarily a hiccup. Yeah, that's velocity. Yeah,
That's velocity. Yeah.
I don't mind keeping
Oh,
him in the, the
it's
shot.
fine. It's totally fine.
Yeah. So that is something that I kind of have always, spend a little bit of time to pick up when I change a field. Um, Other than that, it's not specifically a specific hiccup, but something that has, is something we always keep in mind when when we think about developing our system and designing our process, is that biomanufacturing is insanely expensive. And so the first challenge and everything we think about is like, okay, we can't afford this, how do we make this cheaper? So to give you an example, for prototype stage things, like instead of buying something off the shelf that's offered by a very well established molecular biology company or a robotics company, we're like, okay, well, this fridge on Amazon costs $200. Let's break it apart, take its compressor, and it does what we need it to do. So
Oh, smart.
yeah,
Okay.
we've been doing a lot of this sort of thing. And obviously there's challenges associated with that. Like what we want to do at this point is, we want to put the pieces together and show that
Hmm.
it works, rather than being preoccupied about spending, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for something
Right.
that, might not pan out. So I think that's more of a mindset, rather than a specific challenge. But it is always like, okay, this is the obvious thing we could buy. What else can we buy that's actually 10 times cheaper than this and does the same thing?
Well, I mean, it's a philosophy that is in line with your whole business. With reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Like you're using things that already exist rather than buying something new at a high price. So
Yeah.
it does that. It's interesting. It does fall. It aligns completely with your values of the company, anyways. That you're since bootstrapping by using things that already exist. I think is kind of a cool kind of
Yeah.
part of the
Like
story.
finding new life for things that exist.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 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 He wants to be part of everything.
Yeah, he's actually we had a cat that looked just like him actually. His name was Ferocious.
Ferocious. That's great.
um, okay, so when when you've been building this business, did you what do you see if you were to kind of like go fast forward a little bit into the future? Where do you see as far as how what the uses are going to be right now? Like when you're thinking of this, like, oh, okay, I could see this working for this particular product or this industry, or where are you seeing it? Okay, velocity is gone. We've lost our velocity. He's no longer there. Okay. My question was, yeah. So, from where you're at now, or even before you, when you started the company, where did you see this being used mostly? I mean,
Mm,
because you said, oh, you saw plastics here, plastics there,
yeah.
but for right now, where do you see it probably being used first? You know, in
Mm.
the near future.
Yeah. So it's definitely a growing field, but so far, what has been the most prominent in terms of use cases has been packaging, as you mentioned, different types of packaging. Also, single-use plastics, like like cups for events and festivals and things like that, like cutlery, like the plastic type of cutlery that
Mm-hmm.
that you use. Basically, single-use plastics. It's been picking up pace in 3D printing filament. Actually, it's been increasingly used there as well.
Mm.
Um, Something that I'm very excited about also is actually agricultural applications, because there's so much plastic that goes into agriculture that the end consumer doesn't even see. We think, okay, this is wrapped in plastic in the store. Oh my God, there's too much plastic. It's actually 10 times more. We just don't see it. And
Wow.
during the whole agricultural process. So something that PHA has a great potential for, and there's already some budding applications in that particular spaces. If you imagine like mulch film that you use, for during agriculture, so that you just like cover the ground with this mulch film to protect from different things, and it's typically made from I think it's polyethylene, like low density
Mm.
polyethylene, so a traditional petrochemical plastic that does not degrade. And how farmers typically get rid of it is, well, they have to actually take it out and organize proper like disposal to a landfill and all that, which is associated with extra costs. If you make this with PHA, you could, it does degrade into the soil, so you don't need to have that extra expense of organizing, pickup and disposal. And apart from that, if you have that made out of PHA, I mentioned earlier, PHAs are bacterial food. So as the material degrades into the soil, you're actually enriching the microbial diversity of the soil, which
Mm.
has potential benefits to growing your crops. So it is one of those applications where it's not just a sustainable replacement of something we currently use, but it does provide its own unique benefits.
Mm-hmm. Almost multiple use. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Plastics.
And
Interesting.
actually, the you mentioned earlier, like the medical setting,
Yeah.
PHA is already used in like some suture materials, for
Oh.
example. Yeah, so that's also a great application because again, degrades and it's biocompatible
Oh,
and
interesting.
non-toxic. Yeah,
Right, right.
yeah,
Oh, so they actually make the sutures out of it.
yeah. Some sutures,
Oh,
not
wow.
all, but yeah,
Yeah.
some.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, is that's interesting. Yeah. Talking about timeline. So obviously, I mean, you're not to market yet, but
Mhm.
you've had to somehow you've branded yourself. You're marketing your company to somebody. What process are you in that? Is it investors? Is it
Mm.
partners? I think you mentioned partners. How do you how do you market Olive Bio to find who you need to find right now?
Yeah, so yeah, as you mentioned, different stages require different audience. So right now we are talking to two main groups of people, marketing ourselves to two groups of people. One is potential partners, and potential customers down the line. So discussing, particular applications, a particular, material properties that will be important for them for this specific application. So having those conversations across different industries, it's been something that I've been enjoying a lot because I'm learning a lot about different fields.
Right.
Um, and the other audience that is very obvious for a startup is, we're starting to kind of get a little bit more involved with investors. So far, we funded everything ourselves, but as we are approaching the final point of that first prototype, we're also approaching the point where we want to start bringing some more people in from an investment perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two main sort of audiences. But there's been something also that I've been thinking a lot about, and I would really like to focus more on this in the near future and kind of build from there. And that's specifically this approach of B2B B2C sort of marketing. So in our previous company, the pet genetics company Basepaws, it was a direct to consumer company. So I really got exposed to this, how important and fickle and fruitful the final consumer is um, as a marketing target. So I
Hmm.
think like the field of sustainability is also uniquely suited to kind of influence that end consumer and to maybe them help drive demand for your product further up in the supply chain. Um, there's many examples like that. One that I particularly like is I don't know if you're a cyclist, if you like cycling, but there's this Japanese brand Shimano that make like bicycle parts.
Hmm.
And the end consumer doesn't buy Shimano parts, they buy bikes. But their brand is so strong that the end consumer is going to the bike store and saying, well, does this bike have Shimano parts? I want something with Shimano parts in it. So this is kind of like the blueprint that I would like
Yep.
to follow also.
Yeah, the buyer has major power in that
Mhm.
process just by doing that, by asking about certain products. I mean,
Yeah,
pharmaceutical companies take advantage of
for
that.
sure. Yeah.
Right? I mean, that you what when do you not see a, an ad for a medicine or a treatment for a disease or an ailment, and it's like, ask your doctor.
Yeah.
So you go around and you're targeting end user, but through the providers, or like you said, through the supply chain. So yeah, it's a great model. Absolutely, I think that's smart, because then you'll have people asking for your product.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to do that. And growth wise, when you're looking at the growth now, do you see yourself? I mean, is the desire to see it through to the end? Is it mergers and acquisitions for you, or what's your vision of you and your husband in this?
Hmm. I mean, things change obviously, but from where we currently stand right now, we want this to be something that we build and it lasts. So we're not necessarily rushing to consider the first acquisition offer. We want to build this into something big and something that solves a real problem rather than it just being absorbed into a bigger machine of
Yeah,
somebody else, and maybe they don't make the best use of it.
yeah,
Um, yeah, that's how we're currently thinking about it,
yeah.
at least. Yeah.
I appreciate that. That's you. I mean, it is something you built it from a heart centered place. Like you, I'm sure you want to see it to at least a certain point where it has
Yeah.
got it. You've achieved your goal of actually making a difference in the world and having an impact on the environment, and perhaps and making a change for the next generation. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the goal. But I mean, as I mentioned, things change. If we notice, if we notice that somebody can actually make a lot better use of this than we can at that point, and it can really propel its impact, then obviously something to consider.
Yeah, sure. If there's a point where it's like it would just go from 0 to 100,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's you're not able to do that. But and how big is the company now? Just the two of you?
No. So two of us, and we currently have three people in the lab. We have molecular biologist who's our lead scientist. We have an environmental engineer, our lead engineer, and we also have a lab technician who helps with the molecular biology routine tasks. So yeah, five people right now.
Yeah, that's manageable for
Yeah,
sure.
pretty manageable at this point. Yeah.
That's great. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation. I really we had an initial chat previously, and it already piqued my interest. But it was been really great to be able to ask questions and get more info about OliveBio and what your vision is, and it's very inspiring. I'm really thank you for doing this. I think it's these are solutions that the world needs, and so yeah, thanks for doing this. And is there any last thoughts or things you'd like to mention before we close it up?
Um, yeah, thank you for a nice conversation, and thank you for not minding velocity when you decided to join us. Um, and I think any last words? I would maybe say if I could be so bold as to offer advice to people who are trying to do something new, um, I would probably say something like, just it's important. Like if you're trying to do something new, it's important to listen to people that could help, but only up to a point. It's very important to kind of find that balance of like filtering out the naysayers versus those that can be, constructively helpful. And sometimes that is a very hard line to figure out.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say, like, when you're in doubt, just try it out and like think from first principles. If somebody tells you, okay, you can't do it this way because da 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 da, like for 20 years it's been done this way, you can't possibly do it this way. And I mean, just think about, well, why not? Let's think in detail. Why not? And what are the hindrances? And can I solve them? Is it worth solving them? What will it give us if I solve them? So I found this sort of mindset to be very helpful, and also just to keep in mind that we're teachable when we learn throughout all our lives. Like, I find it very irritating when, for example, okay, I have a PhD and like people put me in this box, like, okay, you're a scientist. You can't possibly know anything other than science. You can't possibly ever learn anything other than science.
Right.
Your learning stopped when you were in your late 20s. This is
Yeah.
it. So I think it's important to recognize that this is not the case. And if you want to learn something and do something, just go do it.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I mean,
Yeah.
we never stop learning. I mean, if as soon as you stop learning, you're dead. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it. I mean, we're learning every day, all the time. It's really important to stay on, to stay in that mode. I mean, it's a mindset, a learner's mindset, and entrepreneurialism is very much about that. It's about you every day something new comes up, and I think that's really good advice. Is that, and there is no. I think you also said too, like it's not bad to question status quo,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I think it's actually good to, yeah, sure, things have been done the same way for a very long time because they work, but that doesn't always mean that they'll always work that way. And somehow, somewhere, sometime, someone has to question something and go, why are we doing it this way when we could possibly do it this way? Maybe is another way that AI is changing the
Mm.
way we think about things, is because AI can actually give you several theoretical options um, in about 13 seconds,
Yeah.
and and then you can consider all the options by throwing it at that. But that's just an example of how, I think there are ways, there's always more than one way to do anything. And so I think that's good advice, is to question the status quo in the
Yeah. Or
process. So
and ask ChatGPT.
ask ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, awesome. Thanks, Juliana, for your time today and sharing your story. It was fascinating to listen to, and I look forward to seeing where you go with OliveBio.
Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Okay, that was a really cool conversation with Yuliana. I enjoyed hearing about her journey as a PhD in genetics into becoming an entrepreneur and founding OliveBio while focusing on creative alternatives to petrochemical plastics. I mean, the environment is something most of us are concerned with, and it's great to hear about these potential solutions that are emerging. They have a fundamental belief and value in reducing and reusing and repurposing. I mean, they used innovative solutions to repurpose existing materials to save costs in these early stages of development. I think they've infused this sort of continuous learning as a vital part of not only personal but their professional growth. And so that was really cool. I look forward to checking back in with Juliana in the future and seeing where things are at in the coming months. And Yeah. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Healthy Enterprise, and stay healthy and have a great week.